All right, so I'm here with Professor Mallinson, and if you wouldn't mind taking a few minutes to describe, in your own words, your work. I know that your focus is primarily Sanskrit, and what kind of initially got you interested in pursuing Sanskrit studies. You'd mentioned you'd been involved for about 30 plus years or so.
And yeah, makes me feel old. Yeah.
Well, that's a tremendous, that's an amazing body of work, like an amazing body of time. It's an interest of mine, and but it is so complex, and the depth. Like, as soon as you start taking a step in that direction, you just find so much more to pursue. So, what had kind of got you first interested in?
Well, I studied Sanskrit as an undergraduate at university, which is quite unusual even amongst my colleagues. Most people sort of switch from one thing to another. And that was really because I didn't want to keep on doing the subjects I've been doing at school, which were kind of maths, physics, and I had Latin. And so I decided I wanted to do Oriental languages. I ruled out Chinese fairly early on. I wanted to go to Oxford, and then I met the Sanskrit professor at Oxford at the time when I went up for an open day, and he inspired me to take Sanskrit, which I did. A friend of mine had already been off to India for 6 months. He was older than I was, and he came back and regaled me with tales about what a wonderful time he'd had.
Great.
I then went off to India for 6 months before university and fell in love with being in India.
Great.
And so the rest of my career has been a sort of balance between, well, I think that it's tilting nowadays, but I used to, it's kind of, my travels in India would then inspire my work and vice versa.
Great.
And I spent, on that first trip, I kind of fell in with a gang of sadhus up in Kashmir on their way to Amarnath. So that became a passion, fascination of mine. And so my research work after I did an MA in anthropology looking at Indian sadhus, but I then decided to go back to my Sanskrit training for my PhD, which was on I needed to find a Sanskrit text relevant to the world of sadhus.
Okay.
And in fact the only such texts to the sadhus that I was interested in and had been living with. The only such texts are the ones on Hatha Yoga, physical yoga.
Right.
So I edited from 30 manuscripts a text on a practice called Khetri Mudra.
Great.
The text itself is called Khetri Vidya. I did that for my PhD, and I was very lucky to do that studying under Professor Alexis Sanderson in Oxford, who's a kind of the doyen, the master of tantric textual studies.
Great. Wow.
And when I got to the end of my PhD, I realised that the received wisdom about the history of Hatha Yoga and yoga more broadly understood was faulty in many ways, and that was mainly because very few of its texts have been studied. So that I'm trained as a philologist. I work with manuscripts. I do those kind of nitty-gritty, tedious stuff of going through lots and lots of manuscripts, comparing variants and so forth. And the people normally of that peculiar bent are not normally also interested in these strange yogis and Hatha Yoga and so forth.
Yes.
So very luckily, I had this whole world of this textual corpus in front of me to play with that no one really looked at. So that's what I've been doing over the last, 25 years now, 25 years. And I'm currently running a research project at the University of London at SOAS, where I'm based. It's a fantastic dream project of mine. 5-year project, and we're doing critical editions of 10 important texts on Hatha Yoga and physical yoga practice, and also combining that with field work amongst yogis in India. So within a couple of years there should be a whole new slew of critical editions and translations of yoga texts, and some monographs and books explaining the history of those traditions.
I look forward to it. And last question, so your interest in some of the the religious traditions of India and so forth, is that rooted, what had first kind of initially drawn you? As someone, I myself had been drawn to that, so I'm always interested to hear about how that affects other people's lives.
Well, I think it was a fascination and a fondness for India's kind of sadhu yogi tradition. I've always been a traveller, and I still do. There's nothing excites me more than turning up somewhere new in India that I haven't been before on a research trip or something. So wandering around with these sadhus who seem to be were living in ancient tradition. It's a bit like if you look at the myths of ancient Greece, which you've got similar myths here in many ways, but they're still alive and people still live those worlds. They're going to the places mentioned in the text. They're bathing, they're performing religious rites in the same places, and you can kind of dive into that. So there's a living classical tradition, so
Great.
it kind of makes studying the text much more alive. And so it was through that, really, I think it was a fascination with that world of India's charismatic, and of course I got kind of drawn in as well by charismatic holy men along the way.
Of course.
Snared. Yeah.
Good, good. I look forward to, I'm going to be looking into your work a lot more now. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Mallinson.